Okay, may our stories be full of joy and compassion today. This will be our first time, really, that we're going to tell a story to the whole group. Okay, we'll make sure and provide plenty of time for those stories. I want to do a couple of little warm-up activities, and I want to tell a story. I want us to learn a short story like we've done in the past and use that as a vehicle for learning some skills. We want to spend most of our time today talking about how to bring stories to life, how to use some dramatic techniques, and so we're going to have a little bit of fun. We're going to be up on our feet rather than telling our stories sitting down. We're going to be up on our feet for a good half an hour or so. And then I think when we tell the stories about compassion in action, we'll sit back down and tell them just like we are right now, okay? There lived once a man and a woman who were so perfectly suited for each other that they were as if one person. Even their looks, it was said, after many years began to appear the same. So inseparable were they that no one could conjure an image of one without simultaneously seeing the image of the other. And this happy couple lived together in joy with a glow of newlyweds long after their first year of marriage had come and gone. But then a war came to their land, which carried strife and suffering to the people and took dignity from the land, turning peace into pain and leading the men away from their homes and their wives. And when at last the war had come to an end, the men returned, weary and worn. And the husband of the happy couple was reunited with his wife, but he did not have the same joy he once had. In fact, it appeared he had no joy at all. His whole world had become a war zone. He was filled with fear, and all around him he heard the sounds of war. He was irritable, and he grew angry at even the slightest conflict. And his wife began to wonder if it was indeed the same husband who had returned from the war. Well, not wanting to lose the joy, the love that she had shared through so many happy years with her husband, she went one afternoon to the home of a wise hermit, asking him if he could somehow mix a potion that would return her husband to the same loving, gentle soul he had once been. And the hermit said he could indeed mix the potion, as long as she could provide the most essential ingredient, the whisker of a living lion. And before the woman could protest, the hermit silenced her, saying, "If the potion is important enough, you will succeed." Well, the woman returned home, contemplating what she would do. And at last one night, when her husband was asleep, she crept from the house with a bowl of rice and meat sauce. She stepped carefully to a place on the mountain where a lion was known to dwell. Standing far off from the cave, she held out her bowl of food, calling the lion to come and eat. But the lion did not come. But the woman returned to the mountain each night with her bowl of food, each night creeping warily a few steps closer to the lion's den than she had the night before. And before long, the lion became accustomed to seeing her there. After many months of this, there came a night when the woman approached to within a stone's throw of the lion's den. And this time the lion stood up and took a few steps toward her, but then stopped cautiously. And the very next night, the woman drew so close to the lion that she could hear its breath, could see its whiskers distinctly in the dark. One evening, the woman and the lion looked into each other's eyes with a gaze that penetrated their souls with feelings of love and respect and compassion for each other, as if they'd known each other from the beginning of time. And the woman knew her moment had come. Begging the lion to forgive her, she took out a pair of scissors and carefully snipped a single whisker from the calm, unflinching lion. Then she thanked the lion. She hurried back down the mountain and back home, clutching the lion's whisker in her hand. The next morning, she paid a visit to the hermit, saying, "I have it! I have the lion's whisker. Now you can mix the potion you promised so my husband can become loving and gentle again." Well, the hermit took the whisker from her, stood before the fire, and examined it. "Tell me how you obtained it," he said. "Each night," said the woman, "I went to the lion's den with a bowl of food for him. And each night I crept closer to the lion's den than I had the night before. I spoke calmly and soothingly to let him understand I meant him no harm. I never spoke harshly. And at last, one night, he took a few steps toward me. And one night, he ate out of the bowl that I held in my hands. I patted his head, and he made happy sounds in his throat. And only after that did I take the whisker." Hearing this, the hermit let the whisker fall from his hand, and when it touched the fire, it burst into blue flames and was gone. "What have you done?" shrieked the woman. "All the months I worked to get that whisker, and now it is all for nothing." "No," said the hermit, "it is not all for nothing. The whisker is no longer needed. Is a man more vicious than a beast? Is he less responsive to kindness and understanding? If you could gain the confidence and the trust of a wild, bloodthirsty beast with gentleness and patience, surely you can do the same with your husband." The woman returned home, and she began to treat her husband with the same loving kindness she had shown to the lion. And with her compassion, he became himself again. And the love that had not borne fruit for many seasons burst into blossom and stayed in bloom the year round. And there was for them, as before, nothing but feelings of love and kindness and joy for each other. And may the same be with all of us. So while we're still on our feet, let me tell a story, and then we're going to tell this one and use this as sort of a vehicle for learning some of these other things that we're going to, different skills, okay? So once there was a brilliant professor at an esteemed university. And one day the professor was invited to deliver a lecture at a notable university. Now, in order to get to this university, the professor had to go across a very wide river. So he hired a boatman to take him across the river. And as the two were going across the river, the professor struck up a conversation with the boatman. He said, "Tell me, my good man, what is your opinion on philosophy?" The boatman said, "I'm afraid I never studied philosophy." "Never studied philosophy? This is terrible. Terrible. I would say that you have wasted 1/4 of your life." "But surely you've studied science." Well, I'm afraid I never studied science." "Never studied science? Well, this is terrible, terrible. I would say you've wasted 2/4 of your life." "But I know you've studied history." Yeah, I'm afraid I never studied history." "You never studied history? Why, this is terrible. You have wasted 3/4 of your life." Just then, a violent wind came up and lashed against the boat and capsized it so that both the boatman and the professor were thrown out into the water. "Swim, professor," said the boatman. "Swim, it's not far to the shore." "I'm afraid I never learned to swim." "Never learned to swim? That's terrible. I'd say you've wasted 4/4 of your life." Okay.
Kind of sad,
So,
right?
A little sad. I think there's a little message, I'm not sure. Maybe. Okay. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to use this story as kind of a vehicle for doing some other stuff. So can we remember this story? Okay, so there's this professor, real bright. You help me. So what are the details? Okay. Okay. So, and Dharma Master was talking the other day about threes. So there is that little three pattern in there, Sure, tell me your opinion on philosophy, science, history, okay? So what do we need to know about the setting first? Okay, there's a river. He's got to go. He's going to deliver a lecture. He's got to go across a river. There's the two characters, the professor, real brilliant professor, some notable university. He's going to this other university to deliver the lecture. He hires a boatman to go across the river. And as they're going across the river, they have this conversation. What do you think of philosophy? Never had the chance to study it. Oh, that's terrible. You've wasted, and so there's this 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, 4/4. So there's that pattern, okay? Okay? And then at the very end, the storm comes up, hits the ship, capsizes it. They're both out in the water. Boatman says it's not far to the shore, swim. Professor says, I never learned to swim. And he turns it back on him, says, you never learned to swim. That's terrible. You've wasted 4/4 of your life. In order to have good vocal production, we want to breathe from our diaphragm, okay? Now here's where your diaphragm is, all right? This is going to sound a little funny, but I want you to do it. I want you to pant like a dog, okay? You feel that? You feel that muscle there? Put your hand right there on your abdomen and pant like a dog. So that is your diaphragm. Now what I want you to do is expand that. Some of us have larger lungs than others. And so, some of you are going to really expand it and some of you not so much. But what you want not to do is to do this, because that's just shallow breathing where you're just sort of getting it here, in your throat. So what we want to do is kind of like expand this. So everybody just blow out. Get rid of all of the air in your lungs, or most of it. And now taking a nice deep breath, go. You feel that? Okay, blow out again. Feel that collapsing, sort of? Breathe in, big breath. Okay. And breathe out one more time. This time we're going to come out with an awe sound. Some of us are going to be able to hold it for longer than others. I don't want you to take a second breath. Just when we breathe out, you just make that awe sound as long as you possibly can. And when it stops, you just stop. That's okay. All right? And you might notice your voice sort of wavering at the end where it goes, That's okay. All right? If you can let it go for longer, that's even better. But how about just on one breath? Okay, breathe out. Breathe in. And out with an awe sound, go. Okay. Good job. Good lung power. My gosh. That's good. Okay. And now we'll do it again. This time, make sure your head is up, kind of at a level gaze, straight out in front of you. Breathe all the way out. Nice deep breath. And go with an awe sound. That's good. Nice job. Wow. You sound like the Tibetan monks. This is good. Okay. Now, how about make it an even flow of breath all the way so that, you don't expend a whole lot of breath in the very first few seconds, that it's just this even flow of breath. It's very steady from start all the way to the finish, okay? And then we'll add some words right after this last one. Okay, blow out. Nice deep breath. And go. Nice even flow of breath if we can. Whatever your first sentence is for this story that we're telling, okay, this one about the learned professor, okay, I want you just to say the first sentence Try to do it all on one breath. For me, the first sentence is something like, once there was a brilliant professor at an esteemed university. So I'm going to try to say that whole sentence on one breath, okay? I'm going to have a level gaze. I'm going to try to make the flow of breath even, so that it's strong vocal power at the beginning and strong at the end. Ready? So we're going to come out with the first sentence, and they can vary. So if your first sentence is a little different than that, don't worry about it. You just say what your first sentence is for that story. Ready? Okay? You blow out your breath. Nice deep breath. And the first sentence of your story, go. Once there was a brilliant professor at an esteemed university. One more time. Blow out. Breathe in. And the first sentence of your story, go. Okay, now we're going to try to make it, without shouting, without yelling, we're going to try to make it as loud as we possibly can. Our goal is vocal power. Make it resound, hit off that wall and resound back to you, okay? Okay, blow out. Nice deep breath. And go. Nice. Nice. Okay, let's do a little work with character voices, okay? So you probably all know the story of Jack and the Beanstalk. And Jack gets up onto the beanstalk, and he sees the giant, and he hides somewhere. And the giant comes out and sniffs the air, and he says, "Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman." Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. We're all going to say that together. Ready? Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. We'll do it another time. Ready? Go. Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Okay, one more time. Ready? Go. Fee, fi, fo, fum, I smell the blood of an Englishman. Okay? Now, we're going to breathe in a nice deep breath, and we're going to come out, and I want you to embody this giant, okay? And I want you to have a giant's voice. I'm not going to say anything because I don't want you to copy what I'm saying or do what I'm doing, okay? And if you feel like you need to look toward that wall or this wall or whatever, because, you feel, I don't know, whatever. You can angle whichever direction you want. I want to hear some big, bellowing giants' voices, all right? Breathe out. Breathe in and go. Okay. Now what I want you to do is say it one more time, but this time I want to see the giant walking around, okay? So he's coming down the hallway, he's sniffing the air, he senses somebody somewhere hiding behind something, okay? So I want you to actually become the giant. Are you ready? That's it, Cynthia. You go, girl. That's it. So feel free to move around a little bit as you do that, or just do it in place, whatever works for you. If you just want to kind of pivot from side to side and move the arms. Ready? Breathe out. Nice deep breath. Go. Nice. Outstanding. Now we're going to play two different characters, okay? One is the big bad wolf, and one is one of the little pigs. We can be the first, the second, or the third, whatever, whichever one you want it to be, okay? And the first thing that happens is the wolf is going to knock on the door and say something like this: little pig, let me in. And the little pig is going to say, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin. And then the wolf is going to say, then I will huff, and I will puff, and I will blow your house down. Okay? Let's say this all together. Ready? Go. Little pig, let me in. Not by the hair of my chinny chin chin. Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house down. One more time. Ready? I'm not going to say it with you. Ready? And go. Okay, here we go. Okay? And what I'd like you to do is to kind of like have one character over here on this one side and the other either, you sort of like pivot one way for one way for the other. Or if you want, you can just like, one character can be over here, and the other character can be over here, and you can just kind of go back and forth, all right? Or you could just look one way, look the other way, okay? Or simply pivot from one direction, pivot the other direction, okay? You ready to go? Little pig, let me in, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin, that's the pig. Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house down. It's actually, I think it's original as blow your house in, so whatever, because it rhymes. Little pig, let me in, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin. Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in. We better do it a couple more times. Little pig, let me in, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin. Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house in. Or down. Little pig, let me in, not by the hair of my chinny chin chin. Then I'll huff, and I'll puff, and I'll blow your house down. See if we can get a different voice for each of these characters. The first is the wolf, okay? So it's kind of similar maybe to the giant, okay? He's kind of menacing. He's animal. He's got kind of a snarly sort of expression, you know? Okay, and the little pig is just really innocent, you know? Good Buddhist. He's a vegetarian, you know? Not so with the wolf, okay? Ready? Okay? I'm not going to do it with you. I'm just going to say go. Here we go. Okay, get your bodies poised because we're going to do some movement with this one. Ready? And go. That's excellent. Okay, that's good. Yeah. Okay, now, and gentlemen, I hope you don't mind on this one, but this is predominantly a female one, okay? So you are a princess, and you are looking into the mirror, and you say, mirror, mirror, on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? And the mirror says, of all the beauties in the land, you, my queen, are the fairest of them all. Okay, something like that. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Of all the beauties in the land, you, my queen, are the fairest of them all. Mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of them all? Of all the beauties in the land, you, my queen, are the fairest of them all. Or something to that effect. Okay? We want a different voice, okay? So, you know, she's very graceful. She's very girly girl, okay? She's looking in the mirror, and, of course, she's vain. She's not very modest. Yeah, exactly. There you go. Yeah. Yeah, she's primping, you know. Looking at her, she's very impressed with herself, you know. And then the mirror is very dutiful, okay? Might even be stretching the truth a little bit. You never know. But complies and says, oh, of course, it's you. Ready to go? We need that one more time. Mirror, mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest of them all? Of all the beauties in the land, you, my queen, are the fairest of them all. Let's really lay this one on thick. I want to see some movements with this one. And ready, and go. Now let's go back to our story about the professor. I want a voice for the professor, okay? So he says, tell me, my good man. I went with kind of, I don't know, sort of an English thing, you know. Tell me, my good man, what is your opinion on philosophy, okay? You know, and the boatman, he's just kind of like, you know, I don't know. Maybe he's like a New York cabbie, you know. I never had any time to study philosophy or anything, you know. Yeah, you know, okay. Huh? It could be whoever you want it to be, okay? So we talked last week about triggers, you know. Who is a person that could be a trigger for your professor, okay? Somebody you saw in a movie, an uncle, you know, a friend that you know, a professor you actually had, someone on television. Who could be a trigger for this boatman character? You know, people want to hear character voices. It's fun and it enlivens a story, okay? You know, at the same time we're trying to get a message across, we're entertaining a little bit too. And there's nothing wrong with that. We talked, you know, Dharma Master talked about the intention of a story. If the intention is to relieve someone's suffering, to express some sort of message, then it's perfectly acceptable to entertain somebody. It's okay. Have a little fun with it, you know. Cultivation doesn't have to all be dry and boring, you know. Yeah? So do you have a voice for the So let's just go with one line of it. Tell me, my good man, what is your opinion on philosophy? And then we'll have the boatman answer him back, I never had a chance to study philosophy. And then he'll reply, never had the chance to study philosophy? That is terrible. That's terrible. I would say that 1/4 of your life is wasted. Okay? But you can start with a 2/4, 3/4, doesn't matter where you start. How about just one of those little exchanges? What is your opinion on history? I never had the chance to study history. Never had the chance to study history? That's terrible. You've wasted 3/4 of your life. Just that exchange of 3 lines there. Do you have an idea for how you can go with? Okay? So let's just do, I kind of want to break up this circle because it's almost as if you're speaking to me. I want you just to kind of like practice. Let's make it into more of like a workshop setting where you're just kind of wandering around, trying out some character voices, really truly rehearsing rather than performing for me, okay? All right, so you're just going to say that exchange back and forth. Ready? And don't all do it in unison. Start whenever you're ready. Go ahead. Somebody start, somebody go second, third, whenever you're ready. So let me just say something about character voices before we go on to the next thing. Each of us kind of has several different, we don't realize it, but we have several different character voices that we can do, okay? And so eventually you kind of build up some of the character voices that you do. Start with the ones that you already know how to do. I'm hearing Van over here doing a little country accent, okay? And, does it relate to the story? No, but she can do a good country accent, so why not channel it into the story? She was doing a sort of New York, sort of Italian deal. She did this little British thing, and she's playing around with her character voices, the ones that she knows how to do. So you find a way to connect with what you already know, some of your interests, okay? Some of the people that you've met in your life, some of the countries that you've traveled to, and make that work in your story, okay? Yeah? All right, very cool, very cool. So what I want you to do is tell the full story. Can we go to, how about just shift a partner, okay? No, we're good. We're good with the partners we have. That's good. We're just the same partners we had. What I want you to do is to tell the story, but this time throughout, I want you to use gestures. But I want you to use what I call impressionistic gestures, not specific or concrete. So not like, once there was a little house in the woods. I don't want you to do that. It looks kind of phony and cheap and, it doesn't really impress anybody. Plus, we're supposed to make pictures in the minds of the listeners, so they're supposed to envision that forest, that house, okay? We want to make them visualize that. That's our job, okay? So if we do too much of it, that gives too much information for them, okay? Let them do some of the work, okay? So, but I want you just to, in the same way that we went around in the circle, we just sort of let our bodies instinctually, and I'm seeing you do this anyways. I got to get out of this thing. Yeah, okay. I'm going to stand over here. I'm seeing you do it. I'm seeing you talk with your hands naturally, and that's what I want to encourage. So just as you tell the story, I want you to talk with your hands the entire time. Okay? That's correct. That's correct. That's good. And I want you to put the character voices in that we just had. Okay? And I also want you to speak with vocal power. Okay? I want you to keep breathing in from your diaphragm if you can. So let's just try to maybe focus on those 3 things. Okay? Vocal power, character voices, and then using gestures throughout. Everybody ready? Okay, we know who's going to go first in each group? Yeah? Want to see a lot of movement. And whoever's first, go ahead. So let's just do one more thing, and then we'll tell our compassion and action stories. The climax of the story is the payoff of the story. It's, it's the dessert, okay? It's what we're waiting for. And I would say that the climax of this story is when the wind comes up, blows the ship over, capsizes the boat, and the 2 people have to swim, okay? So at that point, to let folks know this is where the payoff is coming, we need to kind of increase the tempo, you know? So we're telling the story to maybe a moderate rate, and then all of a sudden, just then, okay? So we kick it into gear. Just then, a violent wind came and lashed up against the ship, and it blew it over, capsized the boat, and the boatman and the professor had to swim. Swim, professor! Okay, so we kind of increase the intensity of the story. We increase the tempo of the story. We're maybe emphasizing it a little bit. We're increasing our volume. Maybe our gestures are just more animated. Okay? So what I want you to do is not tell the whole story, but just tell it from that point. Just then, a wind lashed against the ship, capsizes it, and just from there until the very, very final line of you've wasted 4/4 of your life, okay? But I want to see real intensity, so we're going to start at that point. If you want to start with just then, that's good, okay? Right as the professor said that or something like that. Ready? Decide who goes first. I want to see it really animated, still character voices, still physical movement and involvement, okay? But increase the tempo. You ready? Start from that point and go. Okay. So I want to make sure that we have some time to tell these stories. Let's say this. If you don't feel like telling your compassion and action story today, that'd be perfectly okay. But Reverend Heng Sure has agreed to start us off.
As part of my training as a young monk, I took a pilgrimage. Traveled up the coast of California. And there's a wild section, the California coast, called Big Sur. Tall mountains, deep water, and Hearst Castle, known to the locals as Cursed Hassle. Part of the bowing pilgrimage involves sitting still and writing in a journal. One Sunday, more cars than usual because the weekend, but still 1 car an hour. Together with my colleague, Hung Chao, we were sitting beside the road, and a Ford Bronco came barreling down, drove past us, screech, cloud of dust. Not wanting to pay too much attention, we listened with our ears, and invisibly our antenna went up. Who saw us and stopped in a cloud of dust? The door slammed, and we heard coming across the highway, chink, 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 chink. Chink, chink, chink. What sound makes chink, chink, chink coming across the highway? Chink, 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 chink. Stopping right in front of me, the pair of broken down, dusty cowboy boots with spurs. The chink, chink, chink was the sound of this cowboy's spurs. Immediately in my mind, I was ready to hear, "This highway ain't big enough for both of us." We didn't hear that. I looked up, a pair of bleached, dusty blue jeans and a big silver belt buckle that said Hearst Ranch. I raised my eyes further up, and here were 2 weather-beaten hands with palms together, someone doing a half Buddhist bow towards me, wearing a cowboy hat. "How you doing, fellers? Y'all are Buddhists, right?" And of course, I held a vow of silence, so I couldn't respond. So my companion, Marty, said, "Yes, as a matter of fact, we are Buddhists." He said, "Well, so am I. What a pleasure to meet you." Chink, and he sits down right beside us. "My name's Howard Swanson. By golly, I'm a Buddhist too. Look right here. I got my Sri Lankan Buddhist Association membership card. Took the refuges and the 5 precepts. Can I ask y'all a question?" "Sure, Howard. nobody else out here but the three of us. You know, he says, I'm an American. You're Americans too, right? Well, yeah, we are. American Buddhist monks. Who knew? I had no idea there were American Buddhist monks. But here y'all are. Look at that. My question is, I just don't think Americans were cut out to meditate. Am I right about that? Well, Howard, no, we meditate all the time and we're Americans. Well, what's wrong? What's wrong with me? Every time I meditate, my head just spins. I just can't focus. I can't concentrate. I don't know what's wrong. You know, I'm the foreman here at the Hearst Spread. We got about 200,000 acres up there, and I'm the boss. He says, but I just can't meditate. I figured Americans weren't cut out to meditate. Am I wrong? Well, Marty says, tell me, Howard, do you eat meat? Do I eat meat? Nothing but. I'm a cowboy. What kind of question's that? That's all we eat up there, me and the boys. Well, Howard, let me ask you. Did you ever kill a man? No, I never did that. He says, I'll tell you what. He says, I used to work in the mines. That was a job that was available for us back then. And you know those miners? They're a bunch of, gotta say it, they're a bunch of dirty guys. Dirty outside, dirty inside, the kind of stuff they say all day long, you just don't want to hear it, you know. So you know what I did? He says, I memorized the Rubaiyat, you know, in Xanadu, a sacred pleasure dome decree, you know, Omar Khayyam. I'd memorize that, recite it from backwards to forwards and forwards to backwards. Just kept my mind clean that way. He says, I guess becoming a Buddhist was a natural. He says, but I just can't meditate. I never killed anybody. Well, you know, Howard, if you kill a cow, cows have the same nervous system, the same DNA. It's a lot like killing a man. You suppose if you killed a man, you could ever forget about it? Well, I suppose not. Probably on your mind day and night. He says, yeah, you kill those cows, probably on your mind day and night. He says, so what are you telling me? Well, did you ever consider eating less meat, Howard? Well, no, frankly, I never thought of that. He says, well, what else is there? What could I eat? Marty says, well, you know, there's all kinds of things that you can eat that don't have two eyes that look back at you, don't have a mother that cares for you, and doesn't look back at you from the plate, you know. And, you know, I'll tell you what. He says, Howard, wait a second. Runs over to our station wagon and comes back with a can of Liang You Pai Luo Han Zhai, Taiwan Zuo de Guantou Cai. I got this right here. It's companion brand Arhat dish. Try that. But God, it looks like dog food. Yeah, but you know, Howard, if you eat vegetables, he says, I bet things will change for you. He says, well, anything that'll help me meditate, I'm ready for it. So I'll take this back, you know. He said, come to think of it. Boy, if the boys in the bunkhouse find out that I'm eating dog food, he says, they're going to laugh me out of the bunkhouse. But I got a Buddhist fist. That'll settle with them, you know. No, Howard, I think you're not clear on the concept yet. But one step at a time, he said. So, okay, well, thanks a lot, fellas. Boy, I'm sure glad I met you. Who would think American Buddhist monks? Boy, California is a great state, ain't it? He said, all right, so long. Now, he didn't say hi-oh silver. We were waiting for hi-oh silver away, but he just said, so long. Jumped in the Ford Bronco, sped away. So 7 days passed down the highway. Screech! Hey, monks, how you doing? Boy, I had the best meditation I ever had. Who would have thought it was the vegetables? He said. By golly, he says, I cut out the meat. And he says, I sat still for the first time that I can remember. He says, of course, that stuff still tastes like dog food, but I'll put up with it. He says, that's all right. And he says, by golly, yeah. And you know what? He said, who would have thought about that? The boys in the bunkhouse says, my temper's changed. He said, I don't scold him as much. He says, I've even got a couple of them meditating with me. He's a son of a gun. He says, who would have think? It was the food all this time. By golly. He said, thanks again, fellas. See you down the road, he says. Jumps in the truck and drives away. That's the true story of Howard Swanson, California's vegetarian meditating cowboy. The exercises that Brian gave us just today, if you pin them into the story, think about it. So character voices, and it depends on where I'm telling that story, how much of Howard Swanson I can give him, whether it's funny or not. It's not as funny in Taipei, because I haven't met cowboys, you know. How much, so breath, raising the voice, eye contact, all right? And leaving plenty of space for the thoughts to settle in. So, anyway, what are some other? I was delighted as you were introducing exercises because I knew what was in the story, and you had about three points that were built into my story. So.
Okay, so next week we want everybody to tell their folktale. Is that okay to make that sort of a requirement? Okay? We can sort of practice, we'll warm up in maybe small groups, and then tell to the whole group, okay? So you get a little warm up. We'll do a couple more things about working with audiences. We'll maybe add in another skill or two. And then talk about where we want to go with this. It would be so nice to keep a Buddhist Storytelling Circle together and, you know, meet on a monthly basis. We could talk a little bit more about our plan for the future next week as well. All right, excellent. Amitofo. See everyone next Saturday.